what are the imperative psychological tools or skill sets that they need, not to survive, because I am not the least bit interested in that, but to thrive?
Well, the number one is developing your EQ, right? Your empathy, self-awareness, and self-control. You can't have your heart rate up and your neocortex pegged top notch, fight or flight mode, making the quarter, making the number. All of a sudden you have 3 or 4 kids, you join a club, you pick up some charity projects at home, and you think you're going to be in that really perfect spot to influence others and be able to be empathetic to your peers and bring people with you. So the first part to me comes around controlling your emotions, remaining calm, putting things in perspective, being able to say no, which sounds comical. And I know you've hit on this, but I'm going to touch on it. It's a real finite example. If you and I were to go around to multiple listeners who have not been through this experience and this training, the first thing we're going to see is their calendars are usually out of freaking control. Meeting.
Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Everyone, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I am your host, Chris Doris. And before I introduce our guest for today, our housekeeping item, as always, is if you are not receiving the daily dose mental toughness tips in 30 seconds or less in your email inbox every morning, every day of the year, around 6 or 7 a.m., wherever you are in the world, well, that's an issue. And if you're not getting notified of my blog posts that come out every Tuesday, and if you're not getting notified of these new Tough Talks podcast episodes, let's just clean that up real quick. So easy. Go to ChristopherDoris.com/lists, LISTS. ChristopherDoris.com/lists. Or you just go to the homepage, Christopher Doris, it's right there on the right-hand side. Name, email, click, and you get all the goodies. So this is cool. This is a cool episode for me. I'm pumped because we're going back to our OG, the original Tough Talks guest, our very first ever Tough Talks guest, which was just almost 5 years ago. We've been doing this. That's pretty wild to think about that. That we've been doing this podcast for almost 5 years now, just like 2 months short of almost to the day. So 4 years and 10 months. So yeah, his name is Jon Hunter, and Jon. It really has been one of the most influential people in the evolution of my vocation, truly. And he'll tell you, he knows, he's got dates down better. He's a better historian than me. But I met him here in Scottsdale. He lives here in Arizona. And he was working for a company called CA Technologies at the time, and sales leader. And he was having a meeting with his sales leadership team. And mutual connection, Dave Canham, told Jon, you should have CD come in and talk a bit about mental toughness. And I did, and then he had me participate and had me observe them and give some feedback on the language and all that. And he'll tell you about that. He loves that story. And but then Jon hired me, so Dave Canham and Jon Hunter, they've traveled Siamese twins together throughout their vocation. It's pretty cool. Two of the most important people in my life. And they've brought me in like every step of the way. CA, Micro Focus, Open Text, BMC, all these companies, and for that I'm so grateful. It really opened up my professional world, truly. Jon is, he's an unusual cat. He is the son of an ex-priest and ex-nun. You heard it. That's not unusual. He grew up with great leadership. You know, his parents were remarkable, and he's always sought out great mentoring. He's this person who has always had this beautiful, healthy addiction to growth, personal growth, on every level: fitness, mental health, right, emotional mastery, reading, just growing, self-examination, self-inquiry, right, looking at himself and say, how do I get better? How do I get more out of my people? Jon has historically been recognized as a bit of a harsh dude. He brings it, and he knows it, and he's like, I've known him probably for a decade, maybe a little bit more than a decade, and he is so not the guy I met, and I love the guy I met. Now that's a nice thing to know, right? Like for me to know that by virtue of his unwavering commitment to his development on every level of his life, as a father, right, as a husband, as a business leader, as a friend, as a coach, as a podcaster, you know, he just continues to grow, and I really appreciate this guy. I'm so pumped to be able to share you with him again. All right, and this episode is speaking directly to, it's not only useful or valuable for, but is speaking directly to the CROs and SVPs of sales leaders in the world, because he gets you. He gets your world. He gets the pain. He's felt the pain. And he's got some meds. He's got some medicine for us. So without further ado, let's go find our buddy, the half monk, half hitman, Mr. Jon Hunter. Where you at, brother?
Well, what do you know? What do you know? Look who I found. Jon Hunter. You know what? So this is nice. It was 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago.
At least.
Well, hold on. I can tell you exactly when the hell it was. Okay. It was almost 6 years ago. Almost. Okay. Actually, it's almost 5. September 27th, 2017. You were my first ever podcast guest.
That's right.
Here we are.
Yep.
Has anything changed? Yeah. So you got this new deal. I totally want to dive into how you're using your life right now, because it's, to me, amazing. It is amazing. Delete the to me bullshit. It's amazing, and I want people to hear you describe how you're choosing to be right now, and how proud you are of it, because a lot of people need to hear that. They might need to be doing it too. But one of your new gigs is hunterxlife.com. You're a podcaster now and a blogger, and you're pumping out the goods, bro. And it's nice.
Thank you.
I love it. And one of the things that you do, your brand is solid.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, it's nice. And you refer to yourself as half monk, half hitman. It's just, I see that as very accurate. What do you mean by that?
Well, thanks, Chris. And the reason I thought it was longer than 6 years, because I thought you were going when we first met and really started doing amazing work together to transform mindsets of sales leaders, which was at CA right around our fiscal year 2013. And I want to talk about that. But you're right. You take me back to my mentality. I was at BMC Software. I was in a much different role during that time. And it was really a role where I was more monk than hitman. I really needed to learn to influence, get people to follow me without having to do it because they report to me, really work the edges around style, personality, and still bring results to a very complex business problem. And I think what was on my mind at that time was the need for mental training and discipline, the need to not get triggered by competitiveness, resentment, fear. And it was just such a powerful moment to reflect when people were talking about Jon Hunter at that time. He wasn't Genghis Khan or some of the earlier, commentary, but it was more like, hey man, this guy really listens. He's helped us. He doesn't need the credit. And I wanted to give you credit and others in my life for helping me develop a broad set of skills, which started falling into these two buckets of monk, strategic thinking, planning, journaling, listening, shutting your phone off, reading, planning, calendar managing, all kinds of things. And then, of course, then there's the get stuff done. I need to take action. I want to get it. I want to set goals. I want to make decisions. And how do those two worlds are so important to be blended together. And I've just been developing that more and more and more since that first podcast with you. So it was really great to reflect on that.
That's neat. So, you've spent your entire professional life in the same space. It's like you and I have done one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And they're two different things, not entirely, but you've done one thing. You've lived in the world of enterprise software sales.
Yes.
That's pretty specific.
It
and
is.
It's also like the most, you say this, the most competitive industry on the planet.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It is. And it's not an opinion in my, there's facts, there's evidence, there's reasoning behind that I want listeners to understand. I hope this listening community for this particular podcast are those people. And it's okay if there's buyers in enterprise software listening, but I really want to talk to the sellers, the VPs, the CROs, because we want to touch on, if you're going to go into this world, why not get some guidance and some examples and some best practices to be successful in a community that is so acquisitive, it's so innovative. The speed and pace in which this sector moves at is not for everybody.
Yeah, right.
It's what generates so much wealth. It's what generates so much commissions. It's what generates so much mergers and acquisitions. It's why a lot of bad behavior can happen and a lot of amazing things can happen, because we are in the most competitive, fast-paced, innovative industry of all industries on the planet. Is enterprise software. And that is the baseline we need to start at to really teach and coach people to be uber successful in this space.
All right. So that will be the remainder of our conversation after you talk about how you're using your life right now.
Yeah. So I was a chief revenue officer at Micro Focus HP Software based in Newbury, England. Everyone knows HP Software. It was a massive, bold transformation. And that's exactly, as you know me, Chris, why I did it. Like, hey, look, 4 or 5 people in the world can maybe attempt to take on something bold and transformative. And you talk about legendary, my mindset was, man, you want to get, a bronze statue, you want to go make a difference on people's lives, go take on something meaningful, big. Yeah, a lot of people would say risky. HP had its very well-known problems. But my mindset was, if you believe in yourself, you have high self-esteem, you don't over-identify with your work, it frees you up to go take on meaningful, badass missions in your life. You just don't think about every day your commissions, your money, your job status. And I'm really proud of that work. We did some amazing things all over the world. At the same time, I traveled 400,000 miles in 2019. I was depleting my energy.
Wow.
I wasn't learning on certain aspects in life because I put certain things on hold, and family and friends and community. And so after coming out of that, I said, this is what I need to do. I need to take time, sabbatical, lean into what I call, corporate PTSD, get rid of some of that productivity addiction out of my calendar, out of my life, so I can take a step, read Eckhart Tolle and others, spend more time in Chris Doris learnings, Steve Chandler, others who can teach me. So it's just been a bunch of reading.
Oh yeah, you just read you just read this, as a matter of fact. I'm gonna brag for you. You read that
in a week.
In a week.
Steve Hardison, listen to it every night.
1 million pages long.
And it's a great example, Chris, because if you would have sent me Steve Hart, which you did, I've known of Steve Hardison for a number of years through coaching with you, but it never dawned on me the next level where I needed to go to bring my game, my Jedi superpower to the next level required me to pull myself out of the game.
Ooh.
And then I remember reading it, and I'm going to go, now I know Chris Doris better. Now I know me better by simply, and I haven't met Steve, but just reading the book,
Yet.
asking myself, how am I being?
Steve, you're going to meet this guy. Steve listens to every episode.
Amazing. Well, what an amazing prospect. I mean, almost intimidating thinking about that energy coming in. It's like a nuclear reactor coming into your life. And I picked that up just from reading the book. And now I've joined the Facebook site, but it just also gave me so much power to reflect on what I've done, how proud of it I am, the people I've impacted.
By the way, you just referenced, I'm sorry to cut you off, but just in service to the listeners, the audience, the Facebook group that you just referenced is called The Ultimate Coach. Like the book is called The Ultimate Coach, is what we're talking about right now. And the Facebook group is too. So if you're interested, check that out.
Yeah.
A group of amazing human beings are committed to examining, doing basically what you're doing, bro, right now with your life, which is examining who am I being, who do I want to be, right? And now let me go take some action, right? So I want to summarize a little bit of what you're saying. No, I totally just cut you off, man. My bad. Okay. But I want to make sure people get access to the goodies that you're referencing here. So I want to put those links in the show notes. But you're investing in yourself, bro. You're growing.
Yeah.
And I put myself out the game so I can slow down. And only in that space of slowing down can you have clarity. You are doing, Jon Hunter, legend. That's my name for you. What very few people have the presence of mind or courage. Courage. It really takes courage, because what you're doing is antithetical, is in contrast, is contrary to so much of what we've been conditioned to learn. In fact, it's like being busy is cool or popular and a badge of honor. In fact, it's even a greeting. Hey, you staying busy? I love getting asked that. I go, fuck no. But anyway, so what you're doing is you're unplugging. It takes courage to create perhaps a reinvention of yourself to do. So, one of the greatest questions that I've ever heard crafted in history was crafted by the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer. He's someone I definitely encourage you to study if you haven't yet in your hiatus or your sabbatical. And the question is this: how do you most profoundly want to use the rest of your life? And that's what you're doing right now, man.
Yeah. I love that question. I've heard it from you multiple times. But I feel like you don't understand that question until you pull yourself out of the matrix, until you're Neo. You pull yourself out of the matrix. Yeah. I mean, listen, not everyone wants to be pulled out of the matrix. You've seen the movie. Some dudes want to plug it back in. This is hard. This is different. This is uncomfortable. That's why in my podcast, I talk about self-esteem so much. That if you don't like yourself, and I've been interviewed on this on leadership, if we don't have leaders with high self-esteem, it's really hard to develop them, because they can never get over that voice of I'm not good enough and I can't take the risks and I need to stay in the bubble and I need to stay in the matrix. So it's funny because people think about sabbaticals all weird ways, like you are retired or Jon Hunter doesn't have energy anymore, or anybody doesn't want to go kick ass. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I will be a nuclear reactor like Steve and yourself until the day I die, just making the biggest impact on a community that I care about. And some of it is in my family. Some of it is in CROs. I'm doing coaching right now. I love giving wisdom and knowledge and best practices to current CROs or VPs of sales who listen to the podcast and will often say things to me like, your voice is authentic. You speak in a way that resonates with me. Because one, I've been there and done that. I have the scar tissue. I have the bald head from it. I used to have a full head of hair. I used to have, a wide variety of hobbies. But I've been in those trenches. I've had to get results in a world. And then I decided to go, I'm going to develop getting those results through people, through positivity, through values, through culture. And that to me is a missing ingredient, especially in enterprise software, where we just want to skip the steps. We want to take the shortcuts. We want the
Sorry about
results.
that. Couldn't
Okay.
avoid that one.
We want, quote, results without all of this other work. And I just think it's a missing significant ingredient in enterprise software leadership. And it's one I'm really like to do as an operator. And I love to coach, advise, and speak to as a person who's been there and done that.
Perfect segue. Well done. So let's get back to the pain. Okay, because you get it. I mean, you get it as good as anybody. The pain, the pain of the CRO, the pain of the sales leader, the VP, the pain, right? Talk about it.
Well, one, you're alone.
Mm. Mm.
Go look at the org chart of publicly traded companies. And I'm sure Gary Ridge and other CEOs listening to this are probably going to, spit up their coffee. I mean, it shouldn't be this way, and it's probably not at Gary's company, but in most companies,
Which is the WD-40 company, by the way.
WD-40.
We're going to get to Gary in a minute. I want to talk about Gary.
Yep. But if you go look at it and say, hey, how do you hold accountable these other jobs, these other functional responsibilities? And they'll say, well, we measure them on this, this, and this. Well, how do you hold them accountable? I don't know. It's nebulous. How do you hold accountable the head of sales? Everyone can see it. I often talk about you can be tracked from the moon by your mom, your neighbor, your grandparents, your board, your people. There's one person who gets ultimately scrutinized every single day, regardless of how we got there. It's the chief revenue officer. It's the SVP of sales. So we got to start with, and therefore, guess what, Chris? That particular job title has an 18-month, and I think it's shorter than that now. It's a little bit of an old data point. So they're only surviving on average 18, maybe even 15 months. So you have this immediate fear, urgency, no, I can't trust other people. Not sure other people will have my back. Therefore, I'm going to go lone wolf. I'm going to, burn the midnight oil. I'm going to burn my family. I'm going to do whatever it takes because I have such a short window to be successful.
Well, okay.
It can create a lot of bad habits along the way.
So an NFL player's average career is like 3 years or something like that, something around there, right? But
right.
we know why, because it's such it's a dangerous, it's a harsh sport, right? The physicality of it. Why the hell is the average length of stay or shelf life of a CRO 18 months, 1.5 years? Or maybe less? Why?
Well, because it's easy to hold them accountable. It's easy to put the blame or the consequences of, let's say, a failed business plan, because it's the one person we can see transparently what the results are to their actions. And secondly, most other communities don't understand sales. So product engineers and product managers and other marketers, sometimes they look at that world and they don't understand it. And a lot of times the CRO community doesn't bridge the gap between their peers very well. So they can feel that's where the aloneness comes. And when you're alone, right, it's hard to build currency. It's hard to build trust. It's hard to have people having your back. And therefore, hey, we run into tough times. And if you have a board member or you're a CEO and hey, look, we need a sacrificial lamb. We got to placate our investors. God forbid.
Who would want that job?
Then it's easy to say, it's Bob over there, or it's Jon Hunter. And oh, by the way, if that person has been really motoring along alone and not bringing people with him or her, then you get even further and further away from the other people having your back. So sometimes it's this CRO doing it, right? Going more and more alone, more bravado, more my way, the highway, blaming others, low grade mental thinking. And sometimes it's their peers who just don't understand them. And, and it becomes a combination of political and emotional behavior that can lead to this turnover happening at such a high rate.
Okay, so we've got a couple things. So I'm making a list already. So the pains of the CRO / SVP of sales. So we've got isolation, we'll call it.
Yeah.
We've got very brief shelf life,
Right.
reasons that you just mentioned, which kind of sounds scary, quite honestly, to me. What else? What are other pains of the CROs?
People don't understand the role. So their peers, the world, there's this
others don't understand the CRO's role.
No one understands what it takes to get a customer. No one understands what it's, as you know, through your coaching, no time, no money, no need. Customers are saying, hey, recession, war in Russia, war in Ukraine. And the salespeople have to get those results despite all those headwinds. And there's a feeling no one understands that role. That role is hard beyond imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of it advances that aloneness and advances the fear that no one understands what it's like to attain or protect revenue. Gaining a customer is kind of a unique art form. Not always true, by the way, but that's a strong perception in the community that can lead to a lot of short-term thinking and alienation and isolation, right? Hey, you don't know what we do. You've never sold. You've never carried a bag. That's a very common quote. Hey, have you ever carried a bag? You're going to lead me. You've never carried a bag, quote unquote. You've never had to hit a number. Then your advice to me is going to be put further back in its value. I'll take value maybe from Jon Hunter because he's carried a bag. But even then, right, it takes a strong self-esteem and empathy and self-awareness to take wisdom and knowledge for that community.
How many CROs haven't carried a bag?
Most of them carried a bag, but they may not want to take coaching or advice from someone like a CEO who has not carried a bag, or a board member who's not carried a bag.
Okay.
Or a peer, like let's say a chief marketing officer or a head of HR walks in and says, "Hey, Jon Hunter, we want you to tone it down. We want you to be more congenial. Can you not use such strong language? And
Sim it down now."
Part of your brain is going, "This is Monk Hitman." Part of your brain as a hitman is saying, "Hey, look, I'm doing what I have to do to survive." So that to me opens up why this community needs so much coaching. Is a lot of the coaching they get from HR or other consultants really isn't tailored in that authentic voice that says, "Hey, Bob, John Schweitzer, real CRO, Informatica. He's my Sigma Chi brother from college."
Oh, nice.
You better know what it's like to be
college. Which college was that again?
NAU, Northern Arizona University.
Oh, right.
We're both Sigma Chi's, and he's one of the top CROs on the planet. But I imagine you want to go get John's time, you better bring it real, because he's out there driving revenue, driving performance, and these are the type of people that are going to be real sensitive to a lot of the advice out there that's not really tailored for their world.
So okay, so you said these people, these business leaders, they need to get coaching, but why? Let's talk about what would be in the coaching. In other words, here's the question. So we've just identified some of the pains. Of course, that list goes on, but we've identified some. Isolation, super short shelf life, average career length in that role. You live in a glass house, right? You can't hide your shit, right? And people don't even understand what the hell you're doing. They don't understand your gig.
Bingo.
That's just 4. There's probably more, but that's enough.
That's right.
Enough pain for now. So here's my question. What psychological tools do these people need? What are the imperative psychological tools or skill sets that they need, not to survive, because I am not the least bit interested in that, but to thrive?
Well, the number one is developing your EQ, right? Your empathy, self-awareness, and self-control. You can't have your heart rate up and your neocortex pegged top notch, fight or flight mode, making the quarter, making the number. All of a sudden you have 3 or 4 kids, you join a club, you pick up some charity projects at home, and you think you're going to be in that really, perfect spot to influence others and be able to be empathetic to your peers and bring people with you. So the first part to me comes around controlling your emotions, remaining calm, putting things in perspective, being able to say no, which sounds comical. And I know you've hit on this, but I'm going to touch on it. It's a real finite example. If you and I were to go around to multiple listeners who have not been through this experience and this training, the first thing we're going to see is their calendars are usually out of freaking control. Meeting upon meeting upon meeting upon meeting upon meeting, no yoga, no journaling, no book reading. And you say, hey, Bob, I want you to meet Chris Dorr. I want you to help get your mindset around, taking on the new plan design that's coming your way. Change management can kill the average sales leader because they don't know how to run the business and plan the business for the future. They don't know how to run the business and carve out time to go to yoga, to hit the Peloton, to go on a walk. So when they go into that planning meeting where the board has said, hey, Mr. CRO, Mrs. CRO, we want you to change your entire world. We want you to grow faster. We want you to grow differently. And all of a sudden we're going, holy, how do I do that? What are you talking about? And you get unbalanced.
Yeah, and now here, right. So there's the response. And then here you are saying, well, you need to slow down. They're like, this guy over there is telling me to slow down. Like, I got time for that. And it's funny because, one of my Steve Chandler, you mentioned him earlier, former coach of mine. Do you know what the most lucrative discipline is that I've ever incorporated into my life? Lucrative. Now, there's been many other values of this discipline, but the most lucrative discipline. Do you happen to know it?
Contemplation time or
close enough? You get full credit. Slowing down.
Slowing down.
Here's the paradox that you're talking about. You're talking about going to damn yoga or getting on a Peloton or just taking a goddamn walk. And the response from most people is, I ain't got time for that. And what you're saying is you don't not have time for that.
And it leads to the
18 months to speed things up.
And there's a connection between the 18-month original business problem we had. Why are they 18 months? They're not slowing down. They don't bring people with them. They're being asked to change, and they're saying, I can't. And then what do they do? What do they do? 90%, 80%, 75% of them, they try to outwork their problem. I'm going to work even harder to solve it. I'm going to get up even earlier. I'm going to do more myself. I'm going to skip over my people. I'm going to call the customer myself. So they do less exercise, less meditation, less time with their spouse. The spouse just gets more angry. The kids get more resentful. It builds like a powder keg. And they think they're going to be really good with a customer when the rest of their world is completely out of balance. And you can see it in them. They're just starting to implode. And that's when a CEO will be like, hey, look, Bob, we're going to go a different direction. And they, part of them is absolutely demoralized. Part of their brain really deep down is like, thank God, I need to figure this balance out. And a good example, Chris, let's use some personal Jon Hunter examples, because I have screwed this up and I consider myself a pretty significantly invested leader in mental and EQ training.
Whole life, man. Your whole life.
Dave Canham, right? We met you in planning the FY13 Unleashed CA business plan. We had everybody in Scottsdale. We had Jack Goodell. Valley Ho.
You changed my life with the Valley Ho.
Greg Randolph, Cindy Lloyd, Dave Earhart, Ray Brancato, Ken Taselli, Chris Collins, John Borgard, Tony Orlando, Chris Gandolfo, Toomey. And
Toomey.
I remember,
Toomey was a guest.
Yeah. I know. A lot of these people are believers. They're all out running amazing companies right now. They're all great leaders in their own right. But I had a challenge. We had started putting the best sales force on the planet, on all of our
SFOTP.
And people, who are you? We're the best. It's our mindset. That's what we're striving to be. We made a decision to be the best. And then we had to do the planning exercises for that fiscal year that led to this really cool kickoff that a lot of people listening have been to in Chicago.
The irony.
Yep.
The SFOTP, the best. Don't wait. That's great. That wasn't
Yeah.
planned. That's nice.
But it was a really powerful moment in there for me. So I consider myself pretty trained on this hot topic, pretty high EQ guy.
There's the word pretty in front of that. It's unbelievably, extremely, and totally.
You come in and you did something which I hope other CROs would do with you or anyone else. They allow you to come in early and see and observe the environment.
That's a good point. Okay, that's a good point. Let's slow that down a skosh. Okay.
Yep.
That's actually a really good point. So that takes courage too.
Does.
Right? Because you're saying, all right, show us where we suck. Show us the blind spots that could have us be embarrassed for a minute, but we need to know the truth.
That's right. And how would you know how to help someone unless you go in there and listen? And this is how I sell software. I get on airplanes with CIOs. It was part of our exercises in Chicago. My first answer is, I don't know if I can help you. I need to learn more about you.
Yes.
So I really appreciated you coming in, Dave, hey, let's have Chris come in, and you saying, well, I need to sit there and listen and observe. And you saw TBSFOTP on the wall. And then you saw a lot of us, because we had a massive transformation to achieve. And we were scared, and we were upset, and we were confused. And you heard it in our language. Jack Cadell, we can't grow at this rate. And Ray was coming in, and the general managers were coming back, and we had NIMSoft and SaaS, and we were trying to make 4 different revenue lines work. And it was my job to really bring safety and integrity and a plan together to bring them together. And you help by simply getting up there that second or third day and saying, hey, I thought you guys were the best sales force on the planet, but you sound like the most average sales force on the planet. And you fed back to everybody what you would have been observing about their mindset, their leadership, their thinking. And by twisting that around, we were able to change immediately. But we were all a little embarrassed, to be honest with you. We were a little uncomfortable, like, oh my God, this guy just called us out. But then the language changed immediately. And that group of people put together a really great plan. It turned out to be an amazing sales kickoff. We hit all of our revenue targets that year.
That was a hell of a kickoff.
And Cheap Trick and sales messaging. It was legendary.
It was very legendary.
You're on stage and we sent
drinking beers with Earhart in the morning.
1,400 people got on airplanes telling their neighbor on a Southwest flight. And they said, what do you do for a living? So I'm the best salesperson on the planet. The plane's like, bullshit, you can't be the best. Yes, I am. And those people have all gone on to have great careers and great success. And it is a proud, you asked earlier, what are you most proud? What do you make the impact? That was a proud, impactful moment. But the key, Chris, it's not the Red Cross. We're not here doing happy, joyful, non-productive work. This work, and I want this to be clear to CROs, this work is for one reason, ultimately, productivity. We're doing this to get that plan right. If we didn't get that plan right, then we had bad set quotas, we had misaligned management strategies, and we're going to have high turnover and people not selling at their best and missing deals and missing quarters and missing the end of month. So, so we're not doing mental training or anything else in the investment category. It's only really about culture. Culture is about productivity, HR, productivity, leadership, investments, increasing productivity, more revenue, more bookings, more ARR per person. There's no other reason we do what we do, and that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, well, like the number one instruction to increase productivity is go sell more shit, man. Sell more shit. Okay, sell more shit faster.
Or else. How about that?
You're right.
I want you to get up earlier.
That's inspiring. Was that John Wooden?
I want you to stay later because you're a piece of shit, and I'm going to take your head off.
Well, look, you started the answer to this question, which is what are the tools, like the psychological tools that CROs need to thrive? You remember the first thing you said? The first thing you said, which, by the way, was also the first thing that Gary Ridge, who you brought up earlier, departing CEO of the WD-40 company, in my podcast, when I interviewed him, I asked him, and it wasn't specific to CROs, it was specific to leadership in general. what are the most important elements of successful leadership? And you guys both had the same response, which is the word empathy.
Yeah.
And I asked him to define it. Do you want to hear what his definition
Yeah,
was?
I remember it. Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
Right.
nuts. It was like I was like, I wasn't expecting it. It was good. It was really good. I've shared it a million times since then. He said, Chris, if you and I are out on a boat in rough seas and you're thrown up over the rail, and I come over and I put my arm around you and say, man, I'm so sorry you're feeling shitty. That's sympathy. When I start puking with you, that's empathy. That got me there. I thought, wow, man, talk about like joining my world, having me know beyond the shadow of a doubt, you get me. You get
right.
what I'm going through. You get what I'm feeling right now, man. Like you totally get what I'm feeling right now.
And that's the tool. I mean, people sometimes don't connect that to productivity. So
Right.
playing off that with Gary,
Yeah.
which means that person gets up early, gets better prepared for their sales meeting, stays late because they're all in. And they're the ones that are performing in this economy. They're the ones that are performing and not quitting in the great resignation. They're the ones that are on LinkedIn every day looking for their next job because their boss is just screaming at them because they got this empathetic boss who slowed down to do a skip level meeting with them to say, hey, how are you doing, Bob? We really appreciate you. We know you got a robust pipeline going on. I want to talk to you about that later. But today I want to talk about you and how important you are. And you think you're going to get to that person on LinkedIn to quit their company? And that person's going to be, man, I'm going to give my boss everything I got. Think about building an army with that mentality, with that leadership construct that brings in people like you and Jim Dryberg and others to teach the leaders how to deliver that empathy and to deliver the best practices, to say no to meetings that don't make any sense, so it can free them up to be there for their top people, to make them feel engaged, and how that translates to revenue. And I just really think that's what gets lost a lot of times, is the CRO community, the VP community says, look, I can't do that. I got this pressure on me and I'm going to go even faster, even though I'm going to skip the tools that actually bring me the results that I need long-term. Okay. And the last word that comes with that is scale. The word, you'll hear scale used all of the time. You either know how to scale or you don't know how to scale. And these really are the cornerstones for scaling.
In the same sentence that you articulated in the very beginning of your answering this question that we're still in, which is what are the tools that are imperative for sales leaders, CROs, SVPs in order to thrive? You said empathy. You also mentioned, you said EQ.
Yeah.
Which is emotional quotient.
Yeah, that's right.
Now you have done a lot of work, over the years.
That's right.
On strengthening your EQ. Can you talk a little bit about the power of disciplined thinking, or the ability to respond, which is like response-ability to circumstances masterfully? Like high grade. You also said earlier in the conversation, you mentioned the term low grade thinking. You said low grade thinking. You said that.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, can you unpack that? So, like, low grade thinking is like what, and then what's high grade thinking like, and how do I go from low grade to high grade thinking?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'm sitting in these big meetings, big QBRs, these ELT meetings, these strategic planning meetings, right? This is where your pay grade, this is what separates senior vice presidents and executive vice presidents. I mean, these jobs are hard. I mean, you really are trying to figure out college level math every hour. I mean, I really want people to use metaphors to think, especially if you're listening and you're a sales manager and you're a sales rep, or you're a VP and you want the big brass ring, you want it all. Be careful of what you ask for, because you're going to go to that meeting and you're going to say, well, cloud disruption, competitive disruption. We're not doing well in Europe. The channel, our partners are not performing well. Let's get rid of the channel partners. Let's get rid of the leader in EMEA. Let's go from blue to pink. Change management becomes the name of the game. So can you imagine going into those meetings if you're and you have to influence your peer, you don't have the ability to tell everyone what to do. And I failed at this in my early part of my career. I had the ability to have a coach in an ELT meeting at CA. People may remember this. Bill McCracken is, our CEO. He holds this meeting. I just felt there were decisions being made that were wrong, that were going to impact my people. And my job was to protect my people. And I went into New York and I just let out fury on my peers and my boss. I'm like, hey, this is not going to work. No one understood what I was saying. Very few. I was speaking in a language that they didn't understand. I was translating down. I wasn't translating to my peers, and I certainly wasn't translating up very effectively. The brilliance of my career is I was able to be coached from that, from someone safe who's able to say, hey, how much airtime did you consume? Do you feel that people heard you? And I knew it. I knew I'd screwed up. I knew I'd vented. My neocortex was out of place. I was hot. I was angry. I need to protect these people. And I wrote a post on it most recently called Becoming a Martyr. That's what I was doing. I was going to become a martyr. I was going to fall on my sword to protect my people from senior management because they were making a bunch of decisions that were not going to work out. In my opinion, I took nobody with me on that journey. And I see that as a great example of being able to go to those meetings as I've developed that skill to not react emotionally, to understand how to bring your peers with you and spend more time with them, build safety, build trust with your peers, understand how your boss takes in data and takes in information. It's not changing your view. This is a common mistake, Chris. People will call this political. Jon's being political because he's spending time with the CEO or his peers, the board, to try to frame things so people come together around a common cause. It's not, it's a different way of looking at political. And political meaning you don't go through life alone. You want to take people with you. So this requires everything we've talked about. You got to remain calm. You better have gone to yoga. You better have understood what your peers are thinking about the same topic before you start launching your scuds into the meeting. And before you know it, and so for me, that just became more and more of my brand. Still combined with the hitman, hey, let's get the job done, but a little bit more of, okay, I know where he's going with this. And oh, by the way, I agree, these are common problems. Let's go resolve them together. And next thing you know, the plan gets adopted correctly. The team rallies around it, not just your team, the broader team, and everybody wins. And you just can't do that under extreme pressured situation environments unless you have EQ.
What's something that you practice, like something simple and practical that you practice like daily, like in your life, around town, that has you get stronger? Like you're really fit, and you're fit because you work out.
I do.
So what's like a workout that would have your EQ go up?
Yeah. Well, I don't just work out. I work out with a gentleman named Mac Newton, who's 3-time, 4-time Taekwondo champion of the world, trained the Dallas Cowboys, trained the Tommy Lasorda Cardinals. So I have a baseline of this kind of martial arts thinking that is based on self-esteem and goal setting and decision making and integrity and compassion. And the workout part is actually just a byproduct of how you train your soul and your mind. If you think about it from a martial arts standpoint, I was blessed to meet him, although I didn't follow all of his teachings immediately, just like I didn't follow all of yours immediately, but it became a journey. So when I'm with him at least 3 days a week, where I get to re-energize my thinking about self-esteem and integrity. I get to watch for how the world will creep up on your brain. And then I'm doing mountain climbers. I'm in a 104-degree room. I'm doing push-ups and burpees with a guy who's yes sir, no sir, and challenges you every single day to be the best version of yourself. And that's just become, and you're eating a particular way. You're eating broccoli and non-processed meats. And because this is the engine we need to build, so we are in that really creative, confident state of mind all the time. And that's a huge foundational piece for me.
Now let's go to the psychological equivalent. Okay. So I'm asking, what is something that you practice on the daily that has you heighten your EQ? Now, and then part of your answer is be fit. Okay. Exercise. Raj, what else?
Well, I've been, I continue to leverage the tools. I'm always now challenged. First of all, so you can test for EQ. So I'm in the top 4% of some of the different tests on scoring empathy, self-control, and self-awareness. So you can see it. I've been tested over the years multiple times. I'm also in the top 5% of competitiveness. So you can see the
No way. No way.
Yeah. So a good example of that is just continuing to read the materials, keep the coaches around in your life, like Jim Dryberg is an example.
Yeah.
Continue to stay close to me. I value him challenging me. And then I'll get into reading and journaling and doing all the quiet work. I've become a big believer on hot yoga as an example of people. I wrote a post on it. A lot of people think it's crazy, but when I'm in that trans kind of meditational mindset, I come out of there so self-aware, so in the moment, that I can then look at what I'm doing to other people with so much more clarity. I would be the best on a sales call or a really critical meeting 1 hour after that type of session, or a reading around that kind of topic that then allows you to be the most creative and confident version of myself.
Oh,
and
wow.
I've just been continuing to find different ways to develop it.
Pre-game, you just described, that's a great tool. Pre-game, like what are you doing before a sales call?
And calendar management.
The peak performance mentality, right? Like athletes do it.
Let's talk about calendar management. It also sounds a bit kind of managerial, but one of the game-changing tools for me is I've gone down this path is I color code my calendar. I recommend everyone get the biggest, best assistant in your life. I would argue it's your number one hire is to get an assistant, an EA in your life that protects you from you.
Oh, wow.
I'm a talker.
Roger that.
So I meet Jim Dryberg in my life at CA at one point, and he profiled me and he gave me feedback on where I was. And he was like, hey, if you want to be a super sales manager your whole life, keep doing what you're doing. But if you want more, then you got to look like you can handle more. You can't look out of control and then be going to your boss and go, why didn't I get promoted? It's a very common behavioral aspect of sales managers who want to become VPs. They're out of control. They're burning the midnight oil. The calendar's a mess. They're late to meetings.
What do you say to somebody though? Like, okay, so but what do you say to someone? Because I'm dealing with this constantly, this exact issue constantly.
Yes.
And like CD doesn't get it, for God's sake. He lives alone, for Christ's sake. He can see 2 clients or 3 clients a day. He can afford to do that. He doesn't have people putting meetings on his damn schedule. He doesn't get this shit. He can have buffers between his. I can't. They're putting my meeting against meeting against meeting against meeting. What do you say to somebody that's in the belief, that is convinced, John, that it's part of our culture, it's how we operate? If I start saying no to some of this shit, I'm going to look like a lazy dork. This will reflect badly on me. You just don't. I can't. I just have to deal.
Oh, listen. First of all, I think some of it's going to be based upon their fundamental self-esteem and EQ to begin with. Because if there are a lot of people who you just can't get over this hump, and they may be meant to be super salesers their whole life.
Well, I'm not even talking. I'm talking about the people who are convinced that because of the culture of a company that they're working in, right? That's just normal. It's normal, and this is true for a lot of companies, man. A lot.
Until someone comes in.
Meeting.
Yeah. Well, look, I wrote. Yeah, I write on it. I coach on it. A couple examples. One was there was my guy Jim came to me and said, "Hey, man, Jim gave me feedback. I had an admin at the time that was really super nice, very chatty. I was chatty, and he was like, you need to have someone different than you around you in order for you to go do the main things that are important for these more important roles." And the minute I heard that, I had the intellectual depth and open-mindedness to listen to him go, he's right. And I tell people to this day, I knew I was going to be a CRO that day. I knew it was going to take a lot more work. But that day when he said, hey, you got to learn to delegate, you got to learn to find what's strategically important, you got to learn to build a system that makes sure the business runs so it can free you up to do more meaningful work. You got to employ others on your team, HR, finance, ops, to do some of this stuff, which, by the way, they want to do, and they can't find you. And you got to figure out what the big boulders are and go do those. Still make sure all the other stuff is getting done. And that requires amazing admin and your ability to intellectually understand, as VP to SVP to CRO, I get paid more to work on bigger, more meaningful things and make sure the machine is running. And that is where I believe the separation begins on who's going to go be the top.
Yeah, but
who's never going to move up at all.
As best you can, what do you say to, I'm looking for some advice here. Okay, coach, can you give me some? What do you say to the person that is convinced, right? To the CRO or the SVP, whoever it is, it doesn't matter who it is. Anyone. Well, it does actually differ, because somebody like an account rep, they don't have the authority to say no to these things and create buffers in their calendar. But what do you say to like an SVP who's, I can't create that. I can't go to goddamn yoga.
Right. Well, first, one thing we've done as a tool, this is a little exercise to the listeners. One point, we had our leaders fly to Nevada to do a leadership development training. And we brought in the other functions like HR and finance and ops. And we'd had everyone print off 90 days of their calendar looking backwards. We had them circle the amount of strategic time versus operational time. We had them also rank by a number what you love to do and what you're great at and what you're terrible at and you hate to do. We had 200 or plus managers at this session. And what do you think we found? Almost all of our managers were inverted, doing shit that they hated to do, that they were not very good at, and their calendars were filled with operational time that was not going to move the needle on revenue.
Did these people believe that they have any control over that?
They did, after they saw the feedback built in a presentation and said, holy cow. And then when we brought the other functions in, so we had these amazing, Beth Conway and all of the HR leaders come in saying, hey, we're here to help you. We'll do some of that stuff. Where's your team meeting at? We can never find you people. We had the head of operations come in and go, guys, we can do some of that stuff for you. We saw what you circled that you're doing. We had no idea. You're doing your expense reports and you're doing all this other menial operational financial work. This finance community, we'll do that for you. We want you selling more. Why aren't you selling more? And they're like, they just had this blind spot. Look, we didn't know you would do that for us. We melded those organizations together. And we had, not everyone, because some people were so fearful, they never got it. But a lot of those people, it was one of the biggest breakthroughs of their career. Now, did it start with me leading from the front, saying that's what I'm doing? I'm going to go to my boss, George Fisher, and say, hey, George, I'm trying to focus on these key things. I'm going to build the machine around these things. We're going to delegate these, but we're going to check on them. So the system is the key. The system makes sure the lower value things still get done, even if you delegate them to ops or somebody else. We still need to have a meeting on Friday, make sure that stuff gets done. Yeah. But it frees us up to go work on the big things. And if you bring other people into that world, including a boss who may not understand it, they may go, holy cow. This gives us all time back to be better versions of ourselves, to work on the harder things that deliver more revenue. There's productivity.
Word. Sweet. That's huge. Thank you for that.
Well, in there, Chris, is some Hunter X Life monk hitman, right? The monk is, I'm going to look strategically at my calendar differently. The hitman's going to be, it ain't easy what I just freed you up to go do. You got to go call a customer now and close a $10 million deal. You better be at the best version. Oh, by the way, with a war in the Ukraine, a recession coming, political environments that are volatile, and still we got to get the revenue. Those are the people, in my opinion, that are performing right now. I wrote a post on it yesterday.
Yeah. Can I hear it?
Yeah. The people that are performing right now, I wrote a post
What's in the
that
title?
there are deals. It was a picture from the movie Boiler Room where they talked about there's always two sales cycles, them customer to us or us to a customer. And I've been observing and coaching a lot of different companies, and I'm seeing people deliver in this environment today. And I'm seeing people who are just quitting and blaming and throwing down the towel. And they're coming to me and saying, nobody's doing deals right now. And I'm saying, yeah, they are. They're not doing them with you. And in my post was, there are deals getting done right now, just maybe not yours. And the difference is the attitude, mindset, and training of the sales team. The best sales teams thrive in adverse conditions because they're prepared for it. They expect it. And they're not only mentally tough, but they're mentally trained to take advantage of these conditions. They know it, and they revel in the fact that the competition is going to complain and make excuses, and they're going to use the economy to just give up. It's easier. While the mentally trained and tough sharpen their proposals, make them even bolder, even bigger, with more clear, powerful value to help their customers power through this temporary financial condition. And to me, that's what you're seeing in the haves and the have-nots. The people that have invested in culture, invested in calendar management, invested in mental toughness training, have said no to a bullcrap meeting so they can free themselves up to do a skip level with a top performer, so that performer feels
I don't
valued.
think I've ever heard you use the term bullcrap. You really are maturing.
I am.
You're the monk, man.
It's
hey,
the
back to
pebble out
that
of the
post.
hand. But
our boy, hey, can him. He's all grown up. So
it's still a mixed world. It's
hey, man, you're safe
depends
here.
how
You're
you
safe
get
here.
going. But just putting that to, and as you know, through you, I met Gary Ridge, CEO of WD-40, and I'm really so impressed by what he has built culturally. And he and I talked about what sometimes is missing is this mindset that you can't have an amazing culture and a high performing culture. And it's nonsense. And he's a great example of it. And so he responded to that post, which is so true. I invite us all to consider that when we are building culture and relationships, it is maybe not cool to call it a sale, which is true, but it's an interaction that either builds or reduces confidence and trust. And that is ultimately
either builds or reduces confidence and trust.
Yeah, that's right.
You know who this is?
Yeah.
You do?
That's
Al.
Type A CEO yelling.
The soul-sucking CEO or the soul-sucking leader. Al. As Gary Ridge sent me this. He uses this. Don't be this guy. You're not that guy.
And guess what?
So, hey, man, listen, what did we miss? Are there any questions that I should have asked that I didn't today?
No, I really wanted to talk about, where we began. It's really been important to me to kind of reconnect with this whole topic and continue to take these investments to productivity, this thinking to CROs, and challenge them to not try to outwork their problems, but to bring in this thinking and these tools to help them not just feel better, but perform more consistently for the long haul.
And those two go hand in hand, by the way.
That's right.
Right? Every shred of peak performance, human peak performance research that I've ever looked at or participated in indicates the better we feel, the better we are, but only at everything and only always. So there's that.
Look, man, you know what? In conclusion, I've heard it from you, and I've implemented it gradually and become better and better at it. But I'm telling you, for me, the work I've done on myself has gotten a next level understanding of it and seen it out. The coaching and feedback I can give today is infinitely more powerful than it was 5 years ago. And that's important for people not to see it as a motivational speech, but a long-term training program to deliver long-term meaningful results.
Oh boy.
Just think about how different we are from who we were the day we met. And we were pretty cool then. So yeah, I want to acknowledge you, brother, for your commitment. I mean, it's unparalleled. Since the day I met you, it was abundantly clear that you're a person that has spent his life um, sharpening his saw on every discipline in every area of his life. And you don't take days off. You have no minutes off, bro. And so I appreciate that about you. I'm a better person because of you. I cherish your guidance, and your friendship and your commitment to service. This was your idea to do this episode, truly dedicated to the CRO or to the SVP. So that's your work right there. Thank you for that. Thank you from all the people that are listening to this and taking some of your golden wisdom bomb drops. And people can go to check out your work, man. Your work is killer, dude. Your work is amazing. And I love watching, you know what I love to watch? I love learning from it, okay? But I also love watching people comment. I love you generate an enormous amount of conversation, man. Your work is so good. It's a little bit edgy and provocative, but it's just like that's you, because you're just not afraid of exposing the damn truth. Like, here's the deal. And that's nice, man. So
well, I really hope that we can get this message to this community, that they don't feel alone. They feel there's someone that can speak their language, that there is help for them to be great. And for those aspiring to be in that seat, I hope they listen and learn to do it correctly. Do not just get it to get it, but get it so you can do it well for the long haul. I really hope this begins a whole community of conversation simply in enterprise software
support group
leadership.
Roger that, brother.
Do it.
Good work, man. Thank you, Hunter. HunterXLife.com.
That's it.
HunterXLife.com. Check it out. Brother, you're amazing. Thanks for making time to do round 2. I'll look forward to round 3. We'll try to
can't wait.
Make that happen in less than 5 years. All right, brother.
Thanks, Chris. Go get them. Hope everyone likes it.
They will.
Love that dude. He's so good at metaphors. That's one of my favorite things about talking with Jon, is his brilliant use of metaphor. And I meant it when I said that I really, really love the way he's using his life in this moment to really slow down. And as he said, pull himself out of the matrix, right? Get out the game, right? Get off the court so you can have a clear perspective and take a real profound self-examination. I love what he said about, of course I love what he said about slowing down. Good Lord. Slowing down to speed things up. That's one of my favorite paradoxes in life. And it's totally contrary. Like, I ain't got time. It's contrary to the message, that people are being bombarded with. Just hurry up, come on, we're behind. Hurry up, in the corporate world. More faster. Okay, cool. I will produce faster, and I will accomplish that more effectively and consistently and healthily, if that's a word, by slowing down. Empathy. So, like, I interviewed Phil Gallagher, Avnet CEO, right? And I mentioned it in this video. I interviewed Gary Ridge, and I asked them both the same question, and I asked Jon the same question, a similar question, and now the three of them have all answered the same way, which is the first words out of their mouth. First word when I say, hey, what's the most important element, or what are some of the most important elements of great leadership? Empathy. Isn't that interesting that these people are dropping that? That's pretty amazing. Isn't that that's like a pattern now? And I love that that's happening. I'm super yay to that. It's like getting people. My late great mentor, Jim Myers, man, I loved when he would riff on this at his meetings. He ran an executive forum called the CEO Forum, and he would do a little mini lecture to kick off each one before he went around the room and had everybody share what's going on in their deal. And he would always repeat, in case you forgot, your most valuable resource, all of you, doesn't matter what the industry you're in is the human one. Take care of them. And he would hand out these handouts that are like some of the most important needs we all have, some of the questions that every employee, that your job as leader is to have every employee be crystally clear on always. Do you care about me? Am I important in this? Do I have a future in this? Right? Am I safe here? Can I take a risk? You know, do you get me? Right? That's what empathy is understanding, like truly understanding on the deepest of possible levels, the experience of the other. And I don't know that there's anything that you could do to create more safety for somebody, and that safety then translates into, and this is fundamental to peak performance, the ability to crush. I can't crush when I'm in defensive mode, like protecting myself from screwing up or being reprehended or fired. You know, creative genius is deactivated when I'm in fear state. Creative genius explodes when I feel safe. So this is good stuff. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in as always. Till next time, create miracles.